Good afternoon. Welcome to the Heritage Foundation and our Lewis Lehrman Auditorium. We, of course, welcome those who join us on all of these occasions on our heritage.org website, as well as those who are joining us today via C-SPAN. We would remind everyone in-house to make sure your cell phones have been turned off as a courtesy as we begin. And, of course, we will post the program on our Heritage homepage for everyone's future reference. We would remind our internet viewers that questions can be submitted at any time, simply emailing us at speaker@heritage.org. Hosting our special guest today is Becky Norton Dunlop, Vice President for External Relations here at Heritage. Mrs. Dunlop oversees Heritage's strategic outreach and communication, both nationally and internationally, to conservative public policy institutions, other leadership organizations, and policy activists. Prior to joining Heritage, she served as Secretary of Natural Resources for the Commonwealth of Virginia in the cabinet of Governor George Allen. As a senior official in the Reagan administration, she served as the White House Deputy Assistant to the President for Presidential Personnel and was Special Assistant to the President and Director of his Cabinet Office. She became a Senior Special Assistant to Attorney General Ed Meese and then went to the Department of Interior, serving as Deputy Undersecretary as well as an Assistant Secretary for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks with Secretary Donald Hodel. Mrs. Dunlop currently serves as a board member for numerous public policy organizations and other active associations. Please join me in welcoming Becky Norton Dunlop to the podium. Becky?
Thank you. Thank you so much, John, and let me add my words of welcome to this impressive-looking audience. I don't know how many of you are badgers or cheeseheads. Is that another, But we love having leaders from the Midwest come to the Heritage Foundation. We find that they are plain-spoken and winners. So we're happy to welcome our guest from Wisconsin today. As I was preparing to introduce the Honorable Rebecca Kleefisch, I was thinking of one of the women I admire most in the world, and that's Margaret Thatcher. And so I went to the website and I pulled out some of Margaret Thatcher's quotes. Now, why would I think of Margaret Thatcher and Rebecca Kleefisch? Well, beyond the obvious, they're both women. Both have been successful leaders. Now, Rebecca Kleefisch is a little bit younger than Margaret Thatcher was when she went to the prime ministership. But you start somewhere, and what you do is you do the job that you're called to do with great success, with excellence. And then you're called to do other jobs. And so as I was looking at some of Margaret Thatcher's quotes, it made me think of you, Rebecca. For instance, economics are the method, the object is to change the soul. Rebecca's helping change the way people think in Wisconsin. This may be a bit controversial. In politics, if you want anything said, ask a man. If you want anything done, ask a woman. She's going to talk to us today about some of the things she's done as a leader, but as part of a team in Wisconsin. And then I've got a woman's ability to stick to a job and get on with it when everyone else walks off and leaves it. Part of being a winner and being successful is to take on a task and stick to it. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're so pleased and honored to have the Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin with us today. Our title for today's program is Advancing Sound Policy Reforms. And as you know, that's what the Heritage Foundation is all about, advancing sound policy reforms. And Wisconsin has a success story. Wouldn't it be wonderful if Washington, D.C. had a success story? But Wisconsin does have one, and there are lessons to be learned from our several states across the country, and in particular today, Wisconsin. Over the last few years, we've seen a transformation in Wisconsin. Through tough but prudent structural policy reforms, the state has balanced its budget without raising taxes, reduced government debt, increased job opportunities. Whoa, that's novel, isn't it? begun a revitalization of its educational systems, and provided tax relief to its citizens. Policymakers at all levels, and I might say particularly here in the national capital of our country, can learn much from the Wisconsin example. We are here today to hear from someone who is a partner with the governor of that great state and was asked by the governor of that great state to lead some of these key policy reforms. And so without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the Heritage Foundation podium the Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Wisconsin, Rebecca Kleefisch.
Welcome. Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Becky, so much for having me here today. I was wondering whether you were going to go there with that second one. My husband just got back from Florida. He was boar hunting, and he brought me a beautiful little platter from Florida as my souvenir with that quote on it. He brought the girls boar teeth. Thank goodness that's not what he brought for me. Well, you all know some of my more famous friends, Chairman of the House Budget Committee, Paul Ryan. You probably know the senator, part of the pair that cancels each other out more than any other senatorial pair in America, the conservative from Wisconsin, Ron Johnson. And you probably also know our terrific Governor, Scott Walker. Today, you meet the rest of the family. I know that lieutenant governors tend to be the lesser known of the partnerships in the executive branch. I'm actually here in Washington, D.C. for the National Lieutenant Governors Association meeting, and so this is actually something we talk about. However, I have the fortune of having that one day a couple of years ago when 800,000 people knew who I was. They all signed a petition to recall me from office. I am pretty sure it is the first time in Wisconsin history that 800,000 people knew who the lieutenant governor was. But you all remember why that happened, right? When the governor and I were elected to office, we were facing problems from Wisconsin's past. But we were also facing problems of sustainability coming at us from Wisconsin's future. I have two little girls. There are sons and daughters who we are accountable to across Wisconsin every single day. And so we knew we had to address all of those problems. The previous administration had left us with a $3.6 billion budget deficit, and the governor and I had just spent an entire campaign listening to people who had said, you can't raise taxes on us in the middle of the recovery of this very deep recession. We understood that. And so we made a smart choice, but at the time, it was a very controversial one. We didn't want our taxpayers, many of whom worked in the private sector, to be the have-nots, paying for the benefits of folks who they had determined to be the haves, our government employees. And so we asked our government employees to start paying 12.6% toward their health care, about half the national average, and 5.8% toward their own retirements. That's about the national average. And we made some changes to collective bargaining. Now, to us and the rest of Wisconsin, collective bargaining was the process by which a Madison, Wisconsin bus driver was making $100,000 a year. Collective bargaining was the process by which a Wausau volunteer school crossing guard, a retiree, was relieved of the position because they wanted a paid union employee to do it. Collective bargaining was the process by which taxpayers and moms and dads like me weren't getting the best deal for their school district's employees for health care because they weren't allowed to shop around for the best deal. There was already a health insurance company associated with the union that would do it. And so we asked for some changes, some reasonable changes that we now identify as Act 10. Well, Act 10 was what brought all of those protesters to Madison, Wisconsin, and all of us onto your nightly TV screens. But Act 10 is also the proposal, the idea, the law that has now saved between state and local governments, Wisconsin, more than $2.7 billion. That's an extraordinary reform and seriously addressed the problems that we were facing, both from the past and the future, because we know that we want Wisconsin's sons and daughters to have an incredibly bright and prosperous future. And we also know that they need something to depend on. About this time last year, the Wall Street Journal published an article that has become one of my most quoted and favorites because I think the title is spectacular. Uncertainty is the enemy of recovery, it said. In it, Vanguard said that there were currently $261 billion in unspent investments in the American economy because of the uncertainty coming out of Washington, D.C. And imagine for a second, at least in the upper Midwest, the type of uncertainty that folks were facing. The incredible anxiety of a recession coupled with the difficulty of politicians just not getting along. The sequestration, the fiscal cliff, the government shutdown. One of our congressmen even invented a milk cliff. And when you are the state with the cow and the corn on your quarter, the visual for a milk cliff is really pretty creepy in Wisconsin. And so our folks, and we think Americans, we're looking for stability. And so what we do in Wisconsin, what we urge other states to import, is some certainty, stability, predictability. And that's what we're doing in our state. Some of the good pro-growth reforms we've instituted over the last several years have led to really good numbers in our economy. We instituted a manufacturers and agriculture tax credit, something that's going to take tax liability for our twin drivers of our economy down to nearly nothing, allowing them to hire more people in what are the industries not only of Wisconsin's history, but also the industries of Wisconsin's future. We changed our traditional commerce department into a public-private partnership we now call the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. It allows us to be more nimble, work smarter, faster, better, be more creative when it comes to job retention, but also encouraging the types of investments and organic job growth that will continue our recovery from this recession. And that good pro-growth tax reform has been able to continue because we've seen our personal income growth go up as well. Over the last several years, we've seen good strategies implemented by a good governor who likes creative problem solving. So when last year good policy allowed Wisconsin to post a $759 million surplus, the governor knew where that money should go. It should go back to the taxpayers who earned it. And so we did a big property tax cut and a big income tax cut. Important things when you consider that when people keep more of their own money, they can infuse it into the economy in the ways they choose. Something powerful and something that will eventually lead revenue back to government and produce another surplus this year. But see, last year in our budget, we invested in workforce development as well, which was tremendously important, $100 million in order to address Wisconsin's skills gap, to stay ahead of the curve so we could continue to be globally competitive. On top of that, we did those tax adjustments. We had 5 income tax rates. We dropped them into 4, and we lowered every single one of those income tax rates. And when we realized more money was coming in than government ever budgeted for, we did $100 million in property tax cuts last October. Well, after 10 years of property taxes going up 27%, it was welcome relief for the people of Wisconsin. And when you consider that this year, 2014, property taxes are actually going to be lower than the year in which we took office, that is significant. But unfortunately, it's still not enough. We know we need to continue to implement good pro-growth tax reform, which we know that even the Senate Finance Committee chair acknowledged the other day. The CBO says you must score as revenue positive. Now, we've known that in Wisconsin for a good long time. That's why when we have a $911.9 million surplus this year, we're doing the same thing, giving that relief back to taxpayers. We like to equate it to going into a grocery store. So if you pay with a 20 for 15 bucks worth of food, you don't let the cashier hold on to the 5 and choose whom to redistribute your $5 to. You ask for your change back, right? Governor Scott Walker gets that. He knows that taxpayers deserve their change, and that's where it's going. The average property taxpayer is going to end up with about $101 in property tax relief out of what we call the Blueprint for Prosperity. Now, that's the median valued home of about $150,000. And yes, Virginia, there are homes that are worth $150,000. They are in all of your home states, just so you know. The income tax relief for everyone is going to be $58. So the average income tax relief, $58, and then you couple that with the $322.6 million in withholding changes, right? So the amount that the government sweeps off the top of your paycheck in order to give itself a short-term loan is changing. Starting in April, the average Wisconsin family is going to see about $57.90 back in their paychecks, their own money, money they can count on, starting next month. So April through December, you add all that up, and then you add that to your $58, then you add that to your $101, and you see an average Wisconsin family getting about $681 of their own dollars that they can start budgeting for. It's their money. And they deserve that $681 to spend it in the way they choose. On 189 gallons of gas. Would have been more last week. You could buy 227 fancy coffees with $681. You could buy one night in a Washington, D.C. hotel room that is not a Super 8. $681 is a significant chunk of change. It is real tax relief, and it is the path that Wisconsin is now on. And I say that because the governor has said that every single year we are in office, he is committed to lowering the overall tax burden. And he is so committed to that he asked me to travel the state and engage our small business owners and our veterans and our working moms and dads, even our students and some of our retirees, in a conversation about long-term pro-growth tax reform. We sit around these round tables and ironically call them round tables. And we talk about tax reform, and we've gotten a lot of really terrific ideas. But we need these good ideas. And we need them to come from the citizens of Wisconsin, because right now we're on the top 10 of a bad list. Wisconsin is the 10th worst taxed state in the entire country. We don't want to be there. But we're looking to our people to give us advice. The sound counsel we want and we need in order to be more economically competitive. Though we have chipped away at the tax burden, the governor has now signed $1.5 billion in tax relief into law. As soon as he signs this Blueprint for Prosperity, it's going to be $2 billion of tax relief into law. We know that we need to continue to chip away at that number year after year after year. And the people around these tables are fascinated by some really interesting statistics coming out of Wisconsin. We're number 10 in the nation for our property tax, a full 26% above the national average. We're number 12 in our income tax, 28% above. But we're 35 in our sales tax. As you might imagine, there have been quite a few people who have organically suggested that in order to lower the overall tax burden, we turn up the dial on sales tax and turn down the dial on property or income tax. We have others, particularly our students, who suggested that Wisconsin switch to a flat tax system. We are the birthplace of the progressive income tax. And so it was fascinating for us to hear the next generation of Wisconsinites talk about a very big change. And this is something that two of our neighbors, both Illinois and Michigan, already have, a constitutional flat tax. We're looking for the thought leaders. We're looking for the wave makers when it comes to tax reform, because pro-growth tax policy is what is going to keep Wisconsin and America globally competitive. And we get global competitiveness because we have more manufacturers per capita than anyone else in the country. We need to keep our export rates up. And the way we do that is by assuring that folks are globally competitive. We do that with good tax policy. We're going to continue to travel the state of Wisconsin in order to get people's great ideas on tax reform. But in the meantime, we're also spreading some good news because exports actually are up 5% year over year, led by 9% in growth in agricultural exports, led by 41% in dairy alone. But you all probably already figured on that. In addition to our export numbers going up, we're putting up other wins. And when the analysts look at this, they want to see the charts, right? They don't want moral victories. They want to see the arrows going in the right directions. And in Wisconsin, our arrows are going in the right directions. Unemployment is down. That arrow has gone from a high of 9.2% during the middle of the deep recession to today's 6.1%. Initial unemployment claims are also going down in our state, month over month and year over year, and more people we know are entering the workforce. The arrows that you want to go up are going that way too. In addition to exports, we promised in 2010 when we were elected that we wanted to see the creation of 10,000 new small businesses. Those businesses that we know nationwide create between 60 and 80% of new jobs. Well, in Wisconsin, the number's not 10,000. It's more than 17,000 net new small businesses because of good policy initiatives. In addition to our small business numbers going up and our unemployment going down, jobs in general is a good story as well. We've created more than 100,000 new jobs in our state after losing 133,000 during the previous administration. We're moving in the right direction. The news is all good, but it could be better. And we're looking for ways every day that we can make it better. We know that Ben Franklin once said that the only two things that can be certain in life are death and taxes. We just don't want to kill you with our tax policy, because friends, we will leave that to Illinois. Thank you all so much for having me here. If you have any questions, I would be happy to take them.
Fantastic. Okay, we are going to open the floor to questions. We have 2 microphones in the room. I'd like for you to wait for the mic to arrive and stand up then and introduce yourself to the Lieutenant Governor. If you're associated with an organization, let us know who that is, and then ask your question. All right, who wants to be first? Well, it's always great when we have a speaker who answers all the questions.
Boy.
We have some? Okay, right over here.
Good morning, Mike Rodriguez from the Heritage Foundation. Wisconsin has had a lot of successes recently. What do you think are the 1 or 2 lessons that other governors and lieutenant governors in the nation could learn from Wisconsin and take back to their states?
It's a good question, and I think some of our successes come from bold leadership. The governor is unafraid of controversy when he knows he's standing on principle and good values that are going to lead us up the right path, the path to prosperity. I think that's why we saw him consistent and standing strong on Act 10. Wisconsin has the only fully funded pension system in America. We stand alone when it comes to the argument we can make to investors, CFOs who are considering potential relocations, those job creators who are considering how to grow organically within Wisconsin, when we can say, we will not be coming after your bottom line because we're not going to have to figure out a way real quick to pay for the politicians in the past making bad promises. We're fully funded. And one of the things that we guaranteed with Act 10 was that that was sustainable. So I would say the direction of our leadership and the willingness to stand behind good decision-making is number one. The other thing I didn't really talk much about, and that is what Wisconsin is doing to address our skills gap. I told you that we are a heavy manufacturing, heavy ag-based economy. we have a full 20% of our GDP that comes from manufacturing. And so when we address our skills gap, we're addressing not only these historic industries, but also the ones that we imagine will continue to create jobs in the future. What we did in our 13 to 15 budget was create a program called Wisconsin Fast Forward. And Wisconsin Fast Forward established a labor market information system that will give us far better real-time data in order to communicate both with employers and employees about the needs each group has in order to kind of build a bridge over that skills gap. We're also allowing for the employers themselves to access grant money to train both new and incumbent workers. We were pretty traditional in the past in allowing basically technical colleges through workforce advancement training grants in order to access some of these training dollars. Had to hook up with an educational institution in order to access this money in order to train your workers. Most times it was to train the workers you already had. Well, as you continue to grow, you want to hire more folks. And oftentimes, the expectation coming out of any sort of educational institution, be it a technical college, a high school, or getting a baccalaureate degree, is that your worker will be 80% trained, and then you hope that the employer will train up the last 20% because they've obviously got some worker-specific tasks that people need to be taught on. What we're doing with the Wisconsin Fast Forward program is allowing kind of out-of-the-box players to access that grant money. So economic development corporations, the employers themselves, and technical colleges, but good groups that will continue to move our workforce forward. Then we're doing $35 million in what I talked about with the Blueprint for Prosperity. That's going to go to address 3 different issues in Wisconsin's skills gap. The first one is those technical colleges that I just talked about. We're very, very strong with our technical training in Wisconsin, but we have some high needs industries that have a number of classes that have waiting lists across our state. We're going to try and dig deep on that and eliminate those waiting lists for things like welding, CNC machining, electromechanical engineering, that type of thing. We're also, at point number 2, going to dig deep on dual enrollment and youth apprenticeship, getting young people into the careers that actually exist in Wisconsin and will provide good and bright futures. The average manufacturing employee in Wisconsin makes about 10% more than the average employee in Wisconsin. And then finally, on workforce development is what we call the year of the better bottom line. The governor rolled this out in his State of the State address, and he talks about folks with disabilities having tremendous power to not only move an economy and a community forward when they have the power of a paycheck, but also how it is helpful for the employers themselves to hire folks with disabilities because the employee retention rate is significantly higher than the average worker. So it's called the year of the better bottom line because it really is better for the bottom line of both the employee and the employer. The funding there will go to our Division of Vocational Rehabilitation through our Department of Workforce Development so folks can get the training they want to get the jobs they need.
Excellent. Okay, let's go to the back here.
Hi, Tori from the Heritage Foundation, and I'm also a Michigander, so it's a little close to home for me.
Go Midwest.
Yeah. So my question is in regards to right to work. You didn't really speak much about that, but I know that Wisconsin's been a front runner, and Michigan just passed right to work. So could you speak on right to work a little bit?
Sure. Your Lieutenant Governor texted me from the Senate floor when they were about to introduce right to work. So I was aware that they were going down that path before perhaps many others were, at least journalists. Right to work is a hot button issue in Wisconsin as it is among many other states. We have a lot of folks in our economy who are pro right to work. I don't see an appetite in our legislature right now to pass it. We are having our last day of session for our state assembly today. Right to work is not going to be on the docket. As far as I'm aware, there even has not been a bill drafted on right to work for this session. Now, I can't predict what they're going to take up after this year, campaign year. Folks are going to go back to their home districts. People will be listening, clearly. But I can tell you this. I am the daughter of a vice president of sales and marketing for an envelope manufacturer. So we talk about Wisconsin manufacturers, and then you have to evaluate what the last 20 years have looked like for envelope manufacturers. Happy birthday, Internet, right? And so I watched my father struggle through years of trying to determine where his plants were going to go. He managed the Toledo, Ohio, and the Erlanger, Kentucky operations before moving back to Wisconsin. And so my perspective on this is unique because my father worked in an industry that struggled in new and fascinating ways with every single development that we now hold in our hands. And I have traveled the state talking with our small business owners in what we call our Small Business Roundtable series. And I have done dozens of them over the last several years. And so if this is an issue that is being raised by our small manufacturers and our small job creators continuously, then certainly I imagine our legislators will hear that as well. Right now, we haven't honestly been hearing a lot about it. But I will say this. The time we do hear about it is when we are trying to entice a site selector or someone considering a relocation to Wisconsin. The way we overcome that we're not right to work is through our workforce. We have one of the finest, most ethical, most educated workforces in America. And we're well known for that. We also have some of the lowest workers' comp costs in America. Some of you guys in here are government types. You see that Governing magazine. And if you turn to the article midway through, you'll see that there's a quote out of Fullerton, New York, talking about 2 Fullerton manufacturing companies that chose to move to Wisconsin because of some of the good reforms that we've put in place and also because of our low workers' comp costs. So we remain competitive in all sorts of ways. We're waiting, obviously, to hear any demand for any new legislation, as we do for any legislation. We're hopeful that the people will dictate what their representatives do as opposed to the other way around.
It's always wonderful to hear leaders from the several states talk about competitive ideas. When you come from a conservative think tank, you always think, well, we have the principles and we have the right way of thinking about these things. But, Ronald Reagan used to talk about the American people. And one of the things that he loved about the idea of federalism was that there would be different ideas spring up in different states, and it would be the people who would determine how a state would go, and that would create a competitive atmosphere which would raise all the boats. So that was a terrific response. Yes, next here in the center.
Hi, I'm Diane Katz with Heritage. This is a perfect segue to your comment, Becky, because at the time that Wisconsin and some other states are pursuing real reform, we're laboring under the most regulatory administration there has ever been in the United States. And I'd like you to speak to this idea of this continuous preemption of states' regulatory matters, by the feds.
Sure. As soon as you said Becky, I thought you were talking about me. Thank you for that question. It's terrific because Wisconsin has just undergone, and I spoke about our legislature. We have Republican majorities in both houses, and so we have partners in our legislature who really understand that our goal here is to grow our way out of the recession. And one of the ways we do that is through writing the rules, which is one of the projects that our legislature undertook. They have gone through thousands and thousands of state regs and rules in order to strip from the books the ones that are archaic, unnecessary, no longer useful, no longer wanted by the industries that perhaps requested them decades ago. And so from a Wisconsin standpoint, we're aggressively going after the red tape that just shouldn't be there. We're a manufacturing state, but we don't want to be the red tape manufacturing facility in the state capital. And our legislature finally gets that. Very helpful. That our federal government doesn't get that is unhelpful. We obviously want some sort of collaboration, some sort of cooperation when it comes to setting our job creators free to create jobs. We're still struggling to recover from this recession. This wasn't over overnight. It wasn't a blip on the radar. All of those arrows I talked about going in the right direction, that's hard-won progress. And unfortunately, our federal government is not making that progress easy. My advice would be to look to Wisconsin. I think we have a very nice blueprint there, a blueprint for prosperity.
Thank you. Okay, let's move across the room here. All right, you want to, I can't see anyone with a microphone, so.
Laura Truman with the Heritage Foundation.
I promise you, everyone here is not from Heritage. We'll, the next
Planned all these
questioner,
questions?
the next questioner will not be from Heritage, so, and then we'll go back to whomever has a question. All right,
Brother,
yes.
I promise.
Since the last election, there's been a lot of discussion about women in the Conservatives and the Republican Party. So I was wondering if you could give some thoughts about how you feel we can best get women more involved in running for office, and whether it's the platforms we have, the cultivation of candidates, the messaging. Interested in your perspective.
Thank you. It's a good question, and I am a woman, and so I get asked it a lot. But the reason I actually wish I was asked this question is because I'm a former journalist. And after my career in journalism, I had a very small media and marketing company. And as both a journalist and a marketing guy, I was a storyteller. Some of the best messengers in politics are folks who get storytelling. And that's one of the things, unfortunately, I think the Republican Party often fails to do. We talk in millions and billions. We talk in budgets. We talk in acronyms. We talk in legalese. I am clearly not a lawyer, and so I don't speak native legalese. In fact, when I was sworn in, there was still a lot for me to learn. Before we actually even introduced our budget, before our swearing-in ceremony, I would drive back and forth to Madison in my minivan, mind you, and I would quiz myself on acronyms because that's how people were talking. That makes, to me, politics inaccessible for the average mom. When you're talking a different language, when you're speaking in millions and billions, and moms and dads, we budget in 20s and 50s and 100s, it's above the family budget head. That's difficult for people to understand, and I think it helps people stay away from something that they find would cause them to have to sit and get a tutor. That's unfortunate. That's why when I was telling you all about our tax relief, I told you that it was $101, and I told you it was $57.90, and I told you it was $58, and then I told you about the coffees and the gas, and I could have also told you that if you were in Wisconsin, you could have bought 337 packages of butter at the Quick Trip butter sale. But the limit is 5, so if you're on your way to Wisconsin, but there are so many Quick Trips, no one would ever say anything to you. But these are the ways that we need to talk to people. We need to meet people where they are instead of where we live. We live in acronym land, and there's no way to really change that overnight. But in the meantime, when we're messaging to people, let's talk like real people. And then also, let's not insult women by assuming they are one-issue voters. Someone just asked me the other day, today actually, someone asked me, well, gosh, why do you think Democrats are doing so well with women? Why do you think they're succeeding with this great marketing campaign, this alliteration they have going on? And I said, women are sophisticated. We are independent minds, and perhaps the last time we all got together in order to agree on one subject was 95 years ago when Wisconsin became the first state in the country to ratify the 19th Amendment. And we all can vote. You're welcome, gentlemen. But we can't treat women as if they're single-issue voters, because since that moment, when we all voted on the one thing, we've all developed families and issues that we are passionate about. And I think the Democrat Party assumes we're all single-issue voters. And we're not. And I think it's very insulting that they are assuming we are. And I think this may well be the year that women stand up and ask for our due respect to treat us as the independent minds we are. We make 85% of consumer household decisions. We make 89% of banking decisions, 92% of vacation decisions, and 93% of food decisions. And we know you are what you eat. And so I really think that we need to start treating women with respect in the way we message, in the way we meet them where they are, and speak the language of the average American. And I think that's one of the things that I can help bring to the table is I am a regular parent. I made the cookies at my kid's concession stand for the Little Mermaid Junior. I could have told you 2 weeks ago two people, by the way, spending their $681 in tax relief to buy tickets to the Little Mermaid Junior would have made a sellout on opening night. But these are the things that we think about. We think about our families first, not policy decisions made in Madison or in Washington, D.C. that may or may not affect us. We want to know how it affects us. But if you're not telling us, then it's really hard to get passionate about politics. It was a great question.
Perfect. Well, all right, let's go right here to the front row.
Roman Bueller with Madison Coalition. There's some people that say that women make better team builders than men. And you just came from a meeting of the National Lieutenant Governors Association. And so my question is, who in your mind are some of the other outstanding lieutenant governors around the country? And what kinds of things are you and your other lieutenant governors talking about doing together to help build the right policy choice agenda for the country?
Oh, thank you, Roman. What a great question, thank you. First of all, I love the opportunity to talk about my colleagues, particularly from the upper Midwest. Did you know that in the Midwest, the lieutenant governors of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, and Indiana, and Ohio are all women? Go ahead, clap for that. Now, they're not all Republicans, so when I talk about the stars, I'm going to pick them. But it's because I really see great pro-growth policies coming out of their states. I have the honor of chairing the Right Women Right Now initiative through the Republican State Leadership Committee. And our goal is to recruit and train up 200 women to run for office as conservatives in the next election cycle. Part of what we need to do is continue to identify women who are willing to get into the fray and fight for their kids and fight for their families and fight for their aging parents, because this is what's happening in America. And we need to join the fight because we are the majority. You know, one of the interesting points of the Great Opportunity Project, and I believe we just celebrated its 1-year anniversary the other day, was that when you've got 53% of the electorate, we are not a coalition. We are the majority of voters. We are the majority of those pursuing baccalaureate degrees in this country. We are the majority of the population in Wisconsin. We're the majority. And so we need to get folks from the majority to run for office. But it's challenging, right? And we need to assure women across the country that you can have it all. You just can't necessarily have it all at once. And just like anything else, running for public office is about prioritizing. But we'll help you with that. And one of the stars, I think, in the upper Midwest, across the country, is Kim Reynolds from Iowa. I can tell you honestly, she will be the next governor of Iowa. She is fantastic and a leader on STEM education, which is the future of manufacturing. Science, technology, engineering, and math are where K-12 schools need to go in order to remain competitive. When you look at international test scores and you see, unfortunately, the United States below the international average, we need to focus on our strengths. One of our strengths is our pioneer spirit, our entrepreneurial spirit. And one of the best ways you can bring that out in American kids is through science, technology, engineering, and math. It's also the future of our economy, not just in manufacturing, but in IT, in biomedical, in agriculture. We need to make sure that we're focused on STEM. Kim Reynolds is focused on STEM. Sue Ellspermann is Lieutenant Governor of Indiana and is a wonderful colleague and is also a wonderful partner to her governor. She is one woman you would never have expected to end up in politics. She's an engineer, but is an amazing leader, and after a short stint in her state legislature, was willing to step up to the plate and lead. And today, she is a Lugar Scholar, and she is one of the women who is leading the charge for the Right Women Right Now initiative. I can count on both of those women to help recruit young women in their own states to run for office, but also be great leaders and examples across the country.
Fantastic. Okay, let's move across here. All right, Kat, you want to bring that down to this gentleman here?
Hermes from the Occupy Wall Street. I just wanted to know the amount.
Excuse me, what is your name?
Hermes Cohen.
Okay. And you're with Occupy Wall Street?
Yes. And I just wanted you to know the amount of time it took you to go from the creation of the 10,000 to 17,000 jobs, small business.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
So one of our proudest accomplishments was seeing the growth in small businesses, because we know those 1099 moms or those Etsy earners, those who particularly start businesses even in the service industry, or those manufacturing entrepreneurs like Harley Davidson who started in their garages, are the future of our country, right? And it has been a net number just for the last 3.5 years. Those numbers come out of our Department of Financial Services, and it is a special number to us because those are the job creators that will be hiring their friends and their neighbors. Our promise was 10,000, but we have created 17,000 plus in just that 3.5 years. Now, I can't tell you that they all have 200 employees, but hopefully they're well on their way.
Thank you so much. Okay, who else? Let's see, I see a gentleman here in the back, and then we'll come back over to this side.
Hi, my name is Eric Maranga. I'm with the American Legislative Exchange Council. And my question is, you had mentioned K-12 and STEM education. I wanted to know, what direction is Wisconsin taking in K-12 education reform, and what is your opinion of the school choice movement, education savings accounts, and charter schools?
For them, for them, for them. Wisconsin is the birthplace of modern school choice as we know it. The reforms under Governor Tommy Thompson, we think, kind of led the way for the rest of the country. And so we did a statewide expansion of school choice in this last budget that we're really proud of. I have 2 little girls who go to public schools. The governor's kids went to public K-12 schools. But not every mom in Wisconsin has a school report card score like we do in Oconomowoc. And geography should not determine the outcome of someone's ability to get on the ladder to the American dream. Our little ones should be able to start climbing that ladder as soon as they graduate from high school, whether they choose to pursue a technical college degree, a baccalaureate degree, or something even beyond that. It should be a choice made by moms and dads and the students themselves as how they succeed, not only in K-12, but also moving forward. That's what school choice does. That's what more choices, both voucher and charter schools, do. Actually, before I was here, I just toured the Seed School here in Washington, D.C. Every day, we are looking at and for new opportunities to afford parents the choices that they want for their kids. Every child learns a little bit differently, and no one knows better than their moms and dads. A parent is his or her child's first teacher, and we know that. And we acknowledge that in Wisconsin, both with our statewide expansion and also with our tuition tax credit for those who choose to send their kids to private school.
Very good. Okay, let's go over here then.
Good afternoon. My name is Todd Wiggins, and I just wanted
Todd,
to.
who are you with?
Oh, actually, I'm a local videographer, and so I'm more of a freelancer.
Okay,
so I
very
would say.
good. Thank you.
But my general question is, you may have gone over this prior, but what is the approach towards the growing Hispanic and minority populations as far as not only the educational aspect, but the general policy aspects that you have addressed, and what is the ratio of diversity in Wisconsin in your areas?
Thank you, and then we'll move to the lady behind him.
Sure. Thank you for your question, Todd. We have about 5.7 million people in Wisconsin. About 6.5% is African American. About 6.2% is our Hispanic population. And over the last several years, we have really invested in both the Hispanic and the African American and the Hmong chambers of commerce. We think that one of the best ways to target minority unemployment is entrepreneurship, because we know, particularly in minority communities, entrepreneurs, startup companies, hire their friends and neighbors. In fact, I just got a call. A personal friend is the head of our African American chamber, and I just got a call from her the other day. They are implementing and using a lot of our programs for entrepreneurs. We have a corridor in Metro Milwaukee. So we're an old manufacturing city, and as you imagine, as a lot of manufacturing jobs started to shift out of city centers into the suburbs, and some even offshored, we've had a lot of areas that have become vacant. And unfortunately, for a lot of people in our city centers, that has left a scar of unemployment. And so one of the best ways we can help is by identifying those high needs corridors and investing in them. So we have what's called our Transform Milwaukee project, and we are investing in that corridor by not only putting together some certified site spaces so that manufacturing facilities and other great startup businesses can move in, but also we're providing the resources to train workers who live in the area so that they're not dependent on some of the unfortunate transportation situations that would take them 30 minutes, 40 minutes out into the suburbs in an independent vehicle. Because we know that there are a lot of folks in our city centers that don't have independent transportation. And we are largely reliant on that in Wisconsin. One of the other ways we are investing, particularly in our minority populations, is through a task force I chair called the Governor's Task Force on Minority Unemployment. One of the things we're focused on right now is helping folks in minority communities, and Milwaukee is unfortunately an example of where we need a lot of help. About 50% of African American men are unemployed in Milwaukee. Think about that number. We think about that number a lot. And we also think about another number. Today, in our transportation and logistics industry, in one company, our largest one in this industry, they need 1,200 over-the-road drivers. If we simply get folks the skills they need in order to take the jobs they want, then we've afforded them an opportunity to have the power of a paycheck. But we need to get folks the skills they need. And that goes back to the question over here about workforce development. We want to make sure that people are in the training programs that they want to be in order to pursue great family-sustaining wage careers. That's just one of the ways in which we're investing in the African American and also the Hispanic community. Obviously, school choice and educational opportunity play a big role in that. But even after high school, we need to be investing because Wisconsin has a skills gap. Every day on our totally free state-based monster.com, we call it jobcenterofwisconsin.com, there are between 40 and 60,000 open jobs. And yet we still have people on unemployment. And the average person says, well, why don't you just simply match up those two numbers? And there, bang, one day, you got all those new jobs you can post. Well, of course, the folks who are posting their resumes on jobcenterofwisconsin.com, which is now a requirement, by the way, in order to receive unemployment insurance, don't necessarily have the skills that those employers are looking for. So what we need to do, our responsibility in government as the safety net that's going to bounce people back up into the workforce, is to make sure folks get the skills that they want in order to get the jobs they need. Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
do you see a significant difference in the strategy between yourself and your Democratic colleagues in your basic approach to how you will implement this kind of campaign, if you will, to educate people as to what they need to do and find role models to help them, to motivate them to do it?
Not a lot of difference when it comes to worker training. That's something in Wisconsin that we're really pretty unified about. Both Democrats and Republicans have really championed our technical colleges, dual enrollment, youth apprenticeship, K-12 solutions to get people into careers that actually exist in our state. And that's one of the highlights, I think, of our partnership with Democrats is we all agree that there's a skills gap. There's really no denying it. And we see that as a way we can work together. There's some disagreement on school choice, certainly, but ultimately, we know moms and dads should be picking the best education options for their kids. And why force someone to send their child to a failing school when there is another opportunity waiting for that child to help them succeed? We owe that to the future of our state. Thanks, Todd.
Okay, let's go to this lady here, who I recognize.
Hi, Jenna McNeil with the U.S. Senate. Sorry for another question that focuses on you being a woman and a mom, but
I am one.
yeah, I'm a mother of a 9-month-old, but I also work in politics, and I was just wondering if you had any practical advice on balancing both career demands and mom demands.
I do, because I've been there. Congratulations on your baby. Boy, girl? Boy, what's his name? Nick. Reagan, Churchill. Well, congratulations. That's not easy. And I'm really happy that you've made a really good choice for you. Not everyone makes that choice. And that's one of the things about women in general that's a little bit unfortunate is sometimes, and listen, pop culture promotes this. We see people judging us for the decisions we make, right? Moms, women in the room. It's the stay-at-home moms versus the working moms, right? And it's the Democrats versus the Republicans. There's a lot we have in common. And we should spend a heck of a lot more time supporting each other and each other's decisions than we do. And that's one of the things that I hope you'll be able to lean a little bit into your female colleagues on, especially the older ones, because they've been there before. Seek their advice and seek their counsel. My advice to you is something that I said a little bit earlier on. You can have it all, you just can't have it all at once. We were raised as American daughters to believe that we could do anything, right? Our moms and dads all taught us that you're an American and you're a girl and you can go out there and you can get them. And that's true. But the thing that they don't tell you is that you don't need to accomplish everything in your life on your first day out the door, the moment you graduate. They don't tell you that there is nothing written in law or blood that says that you have to be earning $100,000 by X age. There are no requirements in dreaming the American dream. Everyone's looks a little bit different. We need to spend a little less time judging what others' American dreams look like. But just know, as you pursue your career and you pursue being a mom, that you can view your life today through a special lens. So imagine yourself 10 years down the road. And imagine yourself 10 years down the road looking at yourself today and the decision you're about to make, whatever it is. Not decisions like what I'm going to make for dinner, but big decisions, life decisions here. Would the 10 years down the road you regret the decision you're about to make? Or would you be pleased with yourself? I can honestly look back at the decision I made to quit my job as a news anchor and stay at home with my kids as one of the best decisions I've ever made. In the same right, I can honestly tell you that I can look back now 4 years and say my decision to run for political office as my daughter went to kindergarten, the year I always imagined going back to work, was one of the best decisions I ever made. I like to live without regrets because as women, you know, we have some guilty streaks, right? And the less time you spend feeling guilty about the decisions you're making, the more time you have to spend doing fun stuff and appreciating your family and pursuing your career goals and doing good things for the world, contributing to your community and your country. So spend time doing that. Don't spend time being guilty. So view yourself through a different lens and understand that you can have it all. You just don't need to do it all at once. Good luck.
Fantastic. Okay, do we have any more questions? Well, I think this has been wonderful. I'm going to ask the last question.
Oh.
You know, I served as Secretary of Natural Resources in the Commonwealth of Virginia, which I think is the most beautiful state in the country. But I do know that Wisconsin is pretty nice.
There you go.
And I wonder if you could share with us a little bit about the policies that your administration has pursued making the natural resources of the great state of Wisconsin available for people, and what kind of federal lands do you have in that state, and what does it look like for a growing economy and an improving environment?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. And it's a big question. I could filibuster on this one. Becky, how much time do you all have? Our natural resources are, well, first of all, our people, of course, but outside is extraordinary in our state. And so I'll touch on a few things. I'll touch on our business climate, I'll touch on our Department of Natural Resources, and I'll also touch on tourism. So let me start with our economy. Our Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation is really helping businesses come along in the right direction with protecting our environment. Through the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, they are partnering with our Department of Natural Resources for a program we called Certified Site Selection. 55 contiguous acres need to go into this program, and through this program, basically we're able to tell our job creators that all the mitigation has been done, all the hoops have been jumped through, the permits are all there. Basically, it's a turnkey program. Come on in and start your business. But one of the reasons we're attracting businesses to Wisconsin is because of our fine natural resources. The Chequamegon National Forest, and you know that we made news for several weeks, a couple of weeks ago, when we had the deep freeze. You could actually walk across Lake Superior to witness the ice caves that had needle-like icicle structures that were absolutely fabulous. You probably saw it in the national news. We have 15,000 inland lakes, and we have the Lake Michigan coast, and we have the Mississippi River coast. So we too can say coast to coast. We just made in Wisconsin. So we have fine natural resources, and anyone who depends on water for shipping or for making their product can find a happy home in Wisconsin. In fact, the Global Freshwater Research Center is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And our University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee is leading the way when it comes to freshwater research. We're tremendously proud of the strides we're making in developing good policies for our environment. So let's talk about our Department of Natural Resources for a second, because if our goal is job creation, we know that our DNR can actually play a part in that. One of the things that we're doing there is offering our services for the Office of Business Support and Sustainability. You heard that correctly. Our DNR has an Office of Business Support and Sustainability. They know that typically they have been viewed as a regulatory agency. But ultimately, what they are telling job creators is, hey, we have these regulations in place, but we want to get you to a yes. We want to help counsel you along the way so that we can meet our common goals. Because in government, as in life, there's always this scale. You've got to protect people, but you've also got to make progress. And what you want to do is achieve that balance. Our Office of Business Support and Sustainability aims to achieve that perfect balance. But we're also making sure that our Green Tier program through our Department of Natural Resources is successful. So freeing up our job creators who are willing to go the extra mile when it comes to protecting the environment and making sure that they have opportunities to do exciting things with their companies as long as they are making great strides to protect our environment. And that leads us to our final one, tourism. Because deer hunting, it's It's a billion-dollar industry in Wisconsin. That first weekend alone, we have the finest Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young bucks in the entire nation in Wisconsin. And it's not just our deer hunting. We have fantastic sport fishing. We just passed a bass culling law a couple of years ago, and so we've brought a tremendous amount of competitive fishing tournaments to our state. I just got my turkey permit 2 days ago, and so I will be turkey hunting, providing Thanksgiving dinner a little bit early to the Kleefisch clan. But hunting is a huge part of our tradition. Fishing is a huge part of our tradition. But we're also seeing a growing number of people enjoy our hiking and some of our personal water sports. The Birkebeiner, which is a cross-country ski event, is held in Wisconsin every year. Snowshoeing is growing in popularity. And, of course, who could forget snowmobiling? This year, folks in Wisconsin had ample opportunity to do that. Tourism is the one taxpayer dollar item that is your best bang for your buck in our state. Gets you 6-to-1 return on investment. And if you, as a taxpayer, can put your money where you're going to get $6 back, why would you not do that? And so natural resources, our environment, and the tourist climate in our state, and one of the best wildlife opportunities around, all exists in Wisconsin. So why don't you all come and join us?
Well, that was really marvelous, and I was so delighted as you responded to that last question that the first point you made was that people are our most important, valuable, and precious resource, because that is certainly what we believe too. And in that regard, I'm going to present you with a little gift here. It is from the Heritage Foundation. One of my colleagues is the author, Margaret Thatcher on Leadership, by Niall Gardner, Lessons for American Conservatives Today. Thank you so much for being here. And
Thank you. I will read it. Thank you, Heritage Foundation.
thank you. We're all dismissed.